to order. We have a quorum, and other members who join will announce themselves and introduce themselves. But right now, I'm going to call together. I'm going to call the
Recording
meeting
in
to
progress.
order, and then I'll turn
Anna-
it over to you. Sorry, Margaret. I'll
And I'm
turn it
sorry,
over
I
to
hate
you.
to interrupt. David and Peter are both in the attendees room. They've used the link that was on the agenda. So Kate, can you move them into and make them panelists?
I sure can. Give
Okay,
me 1
great.
minute.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead because time is of the essence, and I know everyone would like to move forward with this meeting, and call the meeting of the Wenham Planning Board to order. It's Wednesday, August 21st, 2024. This meeting is virtual via Zoom webinar, and it's been posted as required, and it is being shown on HWCam. Thank you to HWCam, as always, for their work with us. And it's, of course, on Zoom. So with us in attendance tonight from the Wenham Planning Board, I'll just go in order as I see you on the screen. Dan Pasquarello, who's the vice chairman, Rick Woodland, David Anderson, and Peter Clay are our members here. Our staff, Margaret Hoffman and Kate Mallory, and I believe, and Steve Poulos is here as well, town administrator, staff person. And now I think I should turn it over to Marnie to call her meeting to order and identify her members for those watching on the screen.
Yes, thank you, Anne. I'm now calling the August 21st, 2024 meeting of the Hamilton Planning Board to order. As Anne said, this meeting is being recorded. For our purposes, when I call your name, would you please indicate that you're present? Pat Norton.
Present.
Jonathan Poor.
Jonathan Poor, present.
Emil Dahlquist.
Emil Dahlquist, present.
Beth Herr.
Present.
Darcy Dale.
Darcy Dale, present.
Jeff Austin. He was here.
Present.
Matt Hamill.
Present.
And Marnie Crouch, present. And I'll turn it back to you.
That's great. Thank you so much. So I want to welcome everyone who's here and everyone who's watching. This is basically a work session with the Hamilton Planning Board on the details of what Wenham is doing on the overlay zoning bylaw amendment to comply with Chapter 40A, Section 3A, familiarly known as the MBTA zoning requirements. I'm going to just offer a very brief summary of our process and what we're going to do and how tonight fits with that, and then turn it over to the Vice Chair, Dan Pasquarello, to go through a little presentation. We've been, as a planning board, considering questions about how best to address the requirements of 3A for over a year now in our open meetings. We presented a general plan for compliance at Bucher on June 5th to a public forum. We heard members of the public. We are sharing the details tonight with y'all. And we will hold a public hearing, which has not been held, and that is not happening tonight, and I'll get to that in a second. We will hold an official public hearing on September, and I'm going to get the date wrong because I didn't write it down. I just wrote September in a scribble, but I think it's the 26th of September. And that will be, everyone will have the opportunity to see this bylaw at that point. It will have been finalized and put forward to the select board, and they will have given it back to us for our public hearing. After that point, that the board will vote. Because this is a zoning bylaw amendment, by law, it must be voted on by the whole town of Wenham at a town meeting. The town has scheduled a town meeting for November 16th, 2024, so that the town as a whole can vote. We will not be taking, and I'm sure this is true for Hamilton as well, although I'm not going to speak for them, we will not be taking any votes up or down or sideways tonight. We're just here for a work session. And tonight's public statement period, which I did agree to include on the agenda, although it is not required, is not a public hearing. At the end of the meeting, if anyone who's watching wishes to give a public statement of some kind, you can have 2 minutes as speaker, up to 16 minutes to do that. Again, it's not a public hearing. It's not a requirement that we do that. I feel very strongly that if people are here and they want to listen to us have a conversation about this and they have something to say, they should be heard. So that's why that's on there. And with that, I think I would just, I don't know, Marnie, if you have any opening statement. If not, I'm going to hand it over to Dan Pasquarello.
I will just make one or two observations. Hamilton will not be in compliance with the MBTA communities law by having a zoning district or districts by December 31st of this year. Rather, the town has elected to file an amicus brief in the litigation involving the town of Milton and the Attorney General, which is before the Supreme Judicial Court and should be heard in October. And the other thing that the town of Hamilton has done is that they've engaged a consultant to develop a form-based code for the downtown. And in conjunction with that, there will be some consideration of the Section 3A requirements. And of course, we will be enlightened further when the SJC, which requested amicus briefs, rules on the very difficult issues that it has in front of it. So.
Thanks, Marnie. That's helpful. I don't know if you're up for this, but after Dan does his presentation, our members of our board may have questions about your thoughtful form-based code downtown zoning plan. So
Okay, that's in progress, so to speak. So I don't think we have anything definitive to report on that. There's a working group of about 16 individuals that are providing input to the consultant, and 2 of our board members are involved with that. But as it's my understanding that at this point in time, there have been no hard and fast decisions being made, and it's information gathering at this point.
great. Do you have a timeline, just as long as we're on this conversation?
Emil, could you speak to the timeline? We're hoping to get something before the spring, the annual town meeting in the spring. That's when we hope to have any bylaw amendments in place.
Thank you. Dan, can I turn this over to you? Oh, I'm sorry, Emil, did you have something you wanted to add?
Just a few comments in regard to the scheduling. There'll be another public hearing around middle of September. And it'll be a public engagement that's led by our consultant, Util in Boston. And that'll be an in-person meeting here in Hamilton. The process and the project goes to the planning board somewhere around November, December. We'll be well into the code at that point, and that's it'll be in the hands of the planning board at that point. Right now, we're working with a couple of stakeholders, a dozen or so, who are we're going through workshop meetings and to kind of lay the groundwork for the code and come up with some information that Util is asking for from as a community input.
I think it's an important note to also make is that the purpose of that effort is not specific or in anyhow directly tied to the 3A discussion this evening. It's it's an entirely separate exercise altogether.
Well, I won't challenge that, but that's not right either. So
It may include some facets of the 3A process,
Yes, it
and
does.
obviously you don't have to commit anything here, but I would,
right.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to turn us over to Dan Pasquarello right now, who can walk us through briefly, just so you guys are familiar with what we're planning to do. And Margaret, it looks like you're down into the slides. There we go. We've already done the welcome. Um, and the way we did this was we had a consultant working with us on the numbers. We have had meetings off and on for over a year, as I mentioned. And then we have a couple of folks on the board who have taken a particular interest in this and have worked closely with Margaret, and Dan is, I think, chief among them. So appreciate all the good work that people have done on this. We've had quite a lot of debate about whether to do it, what to do, how to do it. We think we've come up with something that is in the best interest of the town and keeps us in compliance. And in the interest of responding to community input, of course, we're going to hold a public hearing as we're required to by law. And of course, it has to go to the whole town, which we think is the appropriate way to handle a situation like this in a democracy. So I'm going to turn it over to Dan now just to walk you through the details a little bit further. Thank you.
Thanks, Ann. Margaret, I don't know if you were planning to do the first page about the statistics. If you want to do that, I'm fine with that, or I can present it. But if you want to move through I'm happy to handle it. So I actually took a look back at my calendar before the meeting tonight, and our kickoff meeting with our outside consultant about compliance was actually on February 23rd of 2023. So we've been in this for about 18 months now, and we had a subcommittee on our board. Peter Clay and myself were working in those smaller groups with the consultant. And the idea was to figure out what the guidelines that had been proposed were going to require. And you can see on this slide that we have, these are some of our statistics. We have a total minimum compliance requirement of a 24-acre district size under the guidelines as they stand now, 365 total units, a gross average density of 15 units per acre, and 20% of our district and units have to be within the half-mile radius of the station, which works out to 73 units and 4.8 acres. And according to the guidelines, we're able to zone the remaining 19.2 acres and 292 units outside of the station area. So that's what we're dealing in the numbers on top, the 1,460, that's Wenham's total housing stock, and the 111 acres is the developable station area. So if you go to the next slide. So what we did working with the consultant was we tried to identify a number of different parcels in town that would be in compliance under those guidelines. And we had 4 or 5, maybe 6 scenarios. And through this process over the last year and a half, we've worked our way down to what we think are the best 2 districts to propose to be in compliance. The first is a 6.3 acre district, which we call the MFOD1, Multifamily Overlay District 1, which is the Walnut Larch, the green parcel you can see on this screen or slide. And the other district, which is MFOD2, is the Boulder Lane parcel in the lower right-hand corner in orange. So if we go to the next slide, Margaret. This is the MFOD1, the large boulder, which is behind Crosby's, very close to the train station. And the parcel below this, which isn't indicated on this slide, is the Wenham Housing Authority site currently, which is accessed from Larch Lane in Wenham. You can go to the next slide, Margaret. And this is the Boulder Lane site, which is down by Gordon College, which abuts Beverly and 128. You move to the next slide. So we've been working on a draft bylaw amendment, and this is what we have come up with so far. We're very close to finalizing what the proposed draft bylaw amendment will be. We would require 10% affordable units in these MFOD districts, and that's the maximum that is allowed by the state under these guidelines. We would also allow mixed use, but by special permit. As you may know, you cannot require a special permit for the multifamily component, but you can for the mixed use. We'd have a 3-story, 35-foot height limit, an increased buffer from existing residentially used property of 40 feet. In District 1, we would require 1.25 parking spaces per unit. And that's the district that's in the station area. And then 2 parking spaces in District 2 out at Boulder Lane. There would still be site plan review required by the planning board, a 20% open space requirement, 1 covered bike parking space per unit in buildings with 4+ units or more. There would also be bike parking space requirements for mixed use. And the density in the 2 districts would be 13 in MFOD 1 and 17 in MFOD 2, which would work out to 15 units per acre. That might take us slightly above the bare minimum requirements, but it would meet the 15 units per acre. And do we have another slide, Margaret, or is that the... Oh, okay. So I think the next slide is our next steps, which, hold on one second. So we will be having a public hearing on the bylaw amendment on September 26th. And after that public hearing, there'll be a proposal to the select board with a recommendation from the planning board, one way or the other. And then there will be a town meeting vote. And ultimately, this decision is up to the voters of the town of Wenham. So I think that's it for what we've done, where we are, and where we're going.
I had one question about, if you don't mind my asking,
No,
about,
that's fine. I was just going to open my mic and say I would entertain either comments from the Wenham board or questions from the Hamilton board about what Dan has just shown you, or anything about the process.
I was just curious about the access to MFOD 1, the Walnut Road Larch Lane district. Would
Sure.
would the access be from Larch Lane?
Well, the answer to that is we don't know, because this is purely a zoning exercise. So access is more of a development question. And all we're charged with here is coming up with a zoning overlay district. So I don't know what a future developer might want to do. But you could also access this parcel from Larch Lane, if that was your question.
Thank you.
Does anyone on our board or anyone on the Hamilton board have a question about this or want to make a statement of some kind?
I guess so. Pat Norton with the Hamilton Planning Board.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So I think you kicked it off with 2 statements. One is best interest of the town, and second is compliance. And I was curious how you gauge your decision on those 2 points. One, in the compliance aspect, I noticed you're proposing a site plan review, which I didn't know was something you're proposing and hoping that would be accepted, or if that's actually considered compliant with the 3A current guidelines. And then again, how did you gauge best interest of town? Because I think we're also struggling with the 2 points, trying to come to a resolution to both of them, and I think that's where our challenge mostly lies.
Right. I think it was an iterative process, I would just say, and I don't want to speak for every member of the board, but for me, it was an iterative process. We worked with a consultant. We tried to make sense of the guidelines, which, if you've looked at them, are quite complicated. We came up with some scenarios about what to do if we determined that being in compliance was in the town's best interest. And having determined that it is possible to do this reasonably with a smaller area near the train station and another area out by the highway, quite frankly, we came up with some scenarios, evaluated all of them, and then had quite a long series of discussions in public meetings about, whether to comply, how to comply, what to do. And I think in my remarks, I said, we are in a constitutional democracy, and in this particular context in the state of Massachusetts, the voters get to have the final say on zoning questions. We're also quite a small town. We considered whether we were I forget the exact terminology, a small adjacent community, and that we did not meet the requirements for that. Although you would think that Wenham was a small adjacent community, we are not, because of the amount of area that's near the train station, and the number of people in the town. But in any event, I think after quite a lot of debate, the decision was made that, we do not want to be out of compliance. We want to be putting forward something to the town for the entire town to consider and decide upon. If we're going to be not in compliance, it is not going to be the 5 members of the board saying we don't want to do it. It's going to be the whole town looking at what we think is a reasonable way of complying with the law and the guidelines we have, and voting it up or down, because that's the right way to handle this. I'm speaking for myself right now about my decision, and in voting to do this. I can't speak for every member of the board about what their thought process was, but I can turn you over to other members if they want to add anything.
Well, I can answer Pat's question about site plan review. And I have read the guidelines several times, and site plan review is contemplated in those guidelines.
And
Dan, I think you were going to speak. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm happy to take a pass at that as well. So in terms of best interests of the town, Ann is right. We did make a determination based on, process here, that whether we're going to make a proposal, that we're not going to make the decision. We're going to let the town make the decision, but our job is to come up, if we are going to make a proposal, it has to be something that would be compliant. And then in terms of compliance, the process that we went through, the early scenarios that we got working with the consultant, frankly, were far above what our minimum requirements were going to be for each of the scenarios. And so we worked through this as a compliance exercise to get them down, get those scenarios down closer to what our minimum requirements were. And I'll give you an example. For if we used the housing authority site, we could have put the entirety of the land area within the half-mile radius of the station, but that could have theoretically led to 400 or something units. I don't remember the specific numbers. And one of the questions was going to be, if we're going to do this, what kind of impact do we want to have in which area? And so what you're looking at on the screen right now in the proposed District 1 is a 6.3 acre parcel, as opposed to a 27 acre parcel, I think was the housing authority site. And there's this weird quirk in the guidelines where they would not let us split lots for some reason. So even though we're only required to put 4.8 acres within the half mile, the closest we could come to that was 6.3, I think, with these 2 parcels. So if we used any of the housing authority lot, we'd have to use all of the housing authority lots. So that just gives you a view into what our process was and what we thought, best interest of the town in terms of compliance was going to be.
I have a question. This is Darcy. I have a question on how that's going to affect Hamilton's Walnut Road, where the access is all going to be there. Have you thought about what that might look like, or how that will affect the town, our town?
Again, we're not declaring where access can or will be to this. That's not really the question here. The question here is, can we find a suitable area that can be in compliance with the statute and the guidelines as a zoning matter? Obviously, at the point at which there's a development proposal, and the question of where access will come from is going to be on the table. there's access available in a lot of different ways to these parcels. And it's not up to us to say where it is at this point. It basically is going to be up to a developer to propose something, and we will just either vote it up or down depending on the impacts to the surrounding area and the like. So I don't know, Dan, if you want to say more about that, but I think you said earlier, it basically answered this same question, which is we don't know where the access will be once a development is proposed, if it is ever proposed, because of course, the other thing that we haven't talked about here, but that's true for Hamilton as for Wenham, is we have a pretty serious set of restrictions on water and sewer. And so query whether, what could be developed here, requiring or allowing for, 13 units an acre as of right is a very different thing from the potentiality of actually developing such a thing. We all know that, and this is really an exercise in compliance. It doesn't say anything about what actually would be developed there, if anything at all. So,
Will the state have the final say on your proposal?
on the zoning proposal?
No, on the location, say if it's too wet, can they tell you, will they be the final arbiter of whether or not, say if the town does vote for it, will the state be able to come in and say, well, you can't, it's too wet or it's too,
I
whatever.
think, Dan, go ahead.
Yeah. So part of this process is working with the compliance model and the mapping that they've provided. And so we started this with the outside consultants, and they, said, yeah, this would comply or it wouldn't. And then there's been further review of this. So if you looked at this with the sort of the state's map overlays, and I'll defer to Margaret on this, but it would show that where the excludable area is and where the wetlands is, and these districts take all of that into account. So again, it's not necessarily going to, well, it's unlikely that it would be 13 units per acre, but I think the other part of your question is, would the state have to approve this? So yes, somebody would have to make a determination that these are compliant, but we think that they already meet those requirements based on our work with consultants.
Thanks.
This is Jeff Austin from Hamilton Planning Board Associate. I heard, this is an exercise in zonings. I'm wondering if there's been any study or analysis done on the financial implications of this work being done, because it is an exercise in zoning, but it's no doubt some development will happen. So, what are the financial implications of that being done? Like you said, water. I mean, there has to be some study into what that water implication will be, or traffic studies, or what it'll take for emergency services to support extra. The school's a big one too. What about school? If we add in X amount of units, how many children are expected to come with those units, and how does that impact the school? Have all those kind of the implications of the zoning? Have those been considered?
So your question assumes a development of a certain size and scale. And as I said, we don't know that anything can or will be developed. And at the point at which a development is proposed, then of course you'd have a traffic study, you'd have to figure out what how many people would come in, what the parking would be, all of those details get worked out as permits are requested or as people come in with site plans. As far as the zoning goes, so we've just finished a comprehensive master plan for the town of Wenham, and it did include an analysis by Cambridge Econometrics of the fiscal implications of various kinds of development. If you wanted to take a look at that, it's on the town's website. They did an excellent job with that. And so, yes, I mean, in that sense, we have done an analysis of the implications of commercial zones and mixed use zones and residential properties, single family and multifamily. And so to that extent, I can say, yes, we've done that. Obviously, as I said, if there's a development proposed, further analysis would be done at that point, just as it is, as you know, in any situation in which you have a site plan coming before the planning board, you want to know all these things, and it would certainly be the case here. But again, it's a zoning exercise, not a development. We do not have a development proposal for this property.
Lexington was one of the towns that just passed it, and they have 5 proposals and 1 in the pipeline, and they're all 300, 350 each. So
Right, and they're on the Massachusetts Water Resources Authority with unlimited water supplies and maybe a town sewage treatment plant. I don't know. We're not. We can't sustain that kind of development, and neither can Hamilton with our current water situation.
could the state force compliance?
Not with that. I mean, compliance with the zoning law or
No,
compliance?
say with water. Can they force compliance with the
I
water?
don't know. I don't know how they can produce water that doesn't exist.
No,
Hmm.
they can't.
But I think there's a great point being made, though. I think in Miss Weeks, I think in the allowing of a zoning, it opens, a site plan review is limited. Developers find a way to provide water. They find a way to provide sewage. We currently have over 80 children on a wait. I'm not sure how many planning board members here have children and youth in the elementary school programs here between Hamilton and Wenham, but I have 2, and there's currently 80 children on the wait list for the half-day sports zone program that they run through town.
Pat, I
There's
think that,
limited, but again, I think the zoning, I think you're taking the same tone that our select board and town manager are, in that, it's only zoning, and the zoning is it's up to developer, but the zoning allows development, and that's the purpose. That
Right.
the site plan review is extremely limited process.
Yeah,
You
I'm not.
don't have a lot to push back on when you allow these types of developments as part of a zoning bylaw.
Pat,
When
I
all
think,
you
I
rely
think
on
it's,
is a site plan review, and I
I
think
don't
that
mean
is a
to interrupt you,
concern
Pat,
of
but
our.
these are the
These are-
considerations that voters will make when they decide whether to adopt the zoning or not.
I
So
understand,
that's when
Yep.
these things are considered.
but I'm just
in defense of
addressing the
what
conversation
Wenham
we're
has
having
done.
now. This is just the conversation we're having. So
Right, but I
I
mean,
understand the town
So
vote.
Pat,
and,
this is
Miss Weeks?
this is Dan
Okay,
Prosper.
I need to get some order here. I think if
Yep.
you would like to speak, you need to put your hand up. Does everyone know how to raise their hand in a webinar?
Yep.
Thank you.
Oop.
Pat, I'm gonna turn it over to I can't tell whether Rick or Beth had their hand up first, but I'm gonna call on Rick Woodland just because he's to the left and at the top of my screen.
No problem.
Thank you, Madam Chair. A couple things. One, I believe that the people have the right to decide. We are just doing this to present it to the people. That's our job as planning board members, is to get through this in the best light we can for the people of the town and let the people decide. There, you might, if you poll the planning board here in Wenham, you might find that several of us don't agree with this, but we're doing it as our job as elected officials to the town and to keep our powder dry, right? If we want to go after the town says they don't want to do it, we're going to be in other kinds of financial situations that are going to require legal fees. The second thing is, can I ask the Hamilton board? I mean, this is a sharing session. Where are you in this process, if at all? And what have your hurdles been, and how are you overcoming some of them?
well, I can answer that. I think that the town manager and the select board determined early on with feedback from the community that that just doing the type of exercise that Wenham has done would probably not lead to the adoption of 3A compliant districts. So there was a decision to step back and examine the feasibility of a form-based code for our downtown, which could look at the connectivity of the downtown, but also identify potential areas where there could be mixed-use development or some type of compliance with some more dense housing in the downtown. So that's the process that we've undertaken. And I would note that the guidelines indicate that when there is mixed use development, the number of residential units can be decreased to some extent. I can't give you the exact proportions, but so that's the exercise that Hamilton has undertaken. And there has been communication with the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities to let the individuals who are working with that body know what Hamilton has been trying to do. And so we are in the process right now of looking into that form-based code. And, at some point, we'll have to look into potential compliance. So I look at it this way. In terms of the amicus brief, hope for the best. But then again, you have to plan for the worst. So we're trying to, address two things simultaneously. And unfortunately, I think people sometimes forget that it is a law. And if the Supreme Judicial Court upholds the guidelines, then Hamilton will have to decide whether it will draw its districts or the Attorney General of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts will step in and do it. But we're optimistic, at least guardedly optimistic, that the Supreme Judicial Court will examine this law and the guidelines and the ability of the Attorney General to enforce the law and give us better guidance as to what our responsibilities are.
Thank you so much. Beth, Harry, you have your hand up.
Thank you. I'm just going to jump off of Marnie's comment, and I have a couple of things to say besides this, but part of the amicus brief actually says that the only repercussions that can happen to the town are not being able to apply for the grants that are in there. And that's one of the things that our attorneys are proposing in this Milton case, that the only consequences to a town are that they can't receive any grants. So I'm wondering how many of these grants Wenham has received of the 4 grants in jeopardy.
We don't take any of them now, but that doesn't mean we wouldn't want to take any of them in the future.
Okay. And then the next question I have is just like, I think maybe what Jeff was getting at is risk assessment. So for me, I just look at with unlimited bedrooms and unlimited occupants, I need to do due diligence as a planning board member. So I'm thinking conservatively, let's look at like 1 person per unit. So for you, that's 365 times $20,000 a child. So that's that's $7.3 million added to your town budget. So if you have no upside potential, or you haven't yet, and you have 7.3 million downside potential every year, maybe it's more, maybe it's less. I think those are really important conversations. And those are some of the conversations we as a planning board have been discussing, as well as those are the comments I'm hearing in the community. So I don't know where the people are in Wenham, but people are very concerned, and you can, their thoughts are it's more than zoning, because once it's zoned, if somebody comes in, site plan review isn't going to really be able to stop them. And another concern is just that to pass the zoning, you only need a simple majority. But if you ever wanted to revoke the zoning, you'd need a 2/3 majority to revoke it. And I think that's really important and actually an unfair situation. So for me, that's another real deep concern about passing something like this. It's very hard to turn it around.
Right. Well, we have a situation in Wenham where we've had a property zoned commercial for on the order of 40 years, and it's still not zoned. It's not developed as a commercial property. So I hear what you're saying. I don't think in Wenham that we're going to see immediately, developers beating down the door to develop something when we don't have the water or sewer capacity to do it. And so for us, the risk is being out of compliance, and so and not wanting to spend legal fees, quite frankly, on that.
I just want to comment on the sewer. My understanding is when 40R was passed, it was going to be on the developers to do the sewers, and my understanding was that eventually changed, and that went on to the towns. So I think that's something really to look into to see if the 40R did change. that because that again would be a big responsibility onto the town if they had to be the ones who were responsible instead of the developers. So I know I've heard it's going to be the developers, but I also know there's been history that has been said and then it's been
Right.
shifted.
I'm putting water and sewer together and saying we don't have either one at this point. And
Right.
developers like to see water and sewer in order to make proposals. I'm not trying to be flippant, but
No,
it
that
is
is
the
fine.
reality in Wenham. So I don't know if anyone else has a hand up. I can't see the whole spectrum of folks, and maybe Margaret or Kate can help me with that. Is there anyone
And
else
Jeff
who's a board member?
Jeff Austin seems to be the next one with his hand up.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thanks.
sure. So I just want to thank Beth. Yeah, I was trying to get to the risk assessment. I mean, I understand that you're trying to comply and you know, cover your bases. And as you know, Rick said, you want to leave it to the voters, and that's 100% what you should be doing. But part of that leaving to the voters is educating them what the implications are financially if this does go through, because it's the land won't sit there empty. The state is intending on having it built at some point, right? So you have to weigh out with the voters, hey, this is what we're proposing to meet the compliance. Here's the financial implications that could come with it, right? So that's part of the education of the voters so they can vote on their best interest. Yeah, and so that,
As I said,
those are the things I was,
th-
if I could just finish it, those are the things I was mentioning, you know, the water, the, you know, emergency services, but I'm most interested in what conversations or efforts have been on the school side, because that's something that impacts both our towns, right? I mean, the traffic does, yes, but if you bring in additional units this magnitude, it will certainly impact the school size, right? And what's needed to support that school.
right. And as I said, we just finished a comprehensive master planning process in which a lot of this was considered. And so we're not going into this blind. There is a nice economic analysis of the implications of various kinds of development for the town. And that certainly factored into our thinking. One of the things that we identified in that master planning process was the need for different kinds of housing that would allow different kinds of folks to be here, other than single family housing that would provide opportunity for people near the train station. So in some sense, that's consistent with what we're trying to do here. And in the sense that this is low density relative to what the state requires near the train station. And also reflects the need for housing in the community and in the larger Commonwealth. So I'm just going to throw that policy point out there. I can see that Dan Pasquarello has his hand up.
I just want to finish one last statement, because I understand, you know, rightfully so, you're concerned about the legal implications if you don't comply. You know, I just wonder about that. Again, that financial analysis of the long-term financial implications could overshadow greatly any legal concern you may have.
I don't see the financial implications based on the work that our consultants did for us on the master plan as being quite so stark and dire as some of the members have put forward tonight. I think that, you know, you can always assume the very worst case scenario. I don't see that here. I see the limitations on the ability to develop property here, and the requirement to be in compliance as sort of overarching concerns. Which is not to say that when a development is proposed, if it ever is proposed for this location, that we wouldn't analyze it in exactly the way you're proposing, but that's not where we are right now. We're in the question of how we do the best at complying with this law, and in the best way we can. I'll just put it that way. And Dan has now had his hand up for quite some time, so I'm going to give it to Dan Pasquarello.
Thanks, Ann. I wanted to respond initially to a point that Pat Norton had raised. And Pat, you are correct that once this is passed, this is by right or as of right. And once it's in place, it's in place. And I think the voters should understand that. But I do think that is properly a question for town meeting and whether this gets passed or not. And, you know, whether this board, as Rick Woodland said, whether this board recommends this or not, we haven't made any final decision on this yet. We're still working through coming up with our zoning bylaw amendment. We've pinned down what the districts are, but we're not done with the process yet, and we haven't had our public hearing, and we haven't heard from all of our Wenham voters yet, or people who want to participate in this. I did hear a point I want to respond to though, and it came up the first time we heard it as a board, I think was in our June public forum. And I heard it again tonight that this proposal, if these districts get passed, there will be unlimited bedrooms and unlimited units. And I frankly don't know where that's coming from. I don't think that that is tethered to reality in any way, because these things have to, you still have to go through septic and you still have to comply with the building code. So I would say there are a lot of good arguments against 3A that are out there. And I have dug pretty deeply into the briefs in the Milton case, and I'm familiar with the arguments. I don't think that that is one of the good arguments, though. But there are good arguments against that. So if we're going to be talking about this issue, I think we need to be careful about how we are portraying it. So I just wanted to address that point.
Thanks. And I see Jonathan Poor has his hand up. I don't think you have spoken yet. Would you like to say something, Jonathan? Thanks.
Sure. Yes, thank you. So my question is more of a process question. As we can see from the comments and discussion here, it's very complex, it's very layered, and a lot of what enriches the discussion is folks having the right data and background at their fingertips so that they can really evaluate and make decisions with authority. So I just wondered what your experience has been in the process in terms of public outreach, public engagement, and sort of, for lack of a better term, education on what the data and information is, because we face those similar challenges in sort of public engagement and separating what's good solid information from what's less solid information.
Right. Well, we've held 2 public fora, one last fall and one, as Dan and Margaret pointed out in the slides, in June. We've had multiple, a year and a half's worth of conversations in public meetings, which the only conversations we've had about this and its process have been in open session. And there is information on the town website. We have gone out of our way to try to present this material to folks who are interested, such as yourselves. People are always invited to attend our meetings. We're always on Zoom. We're often on HWCam. And we have heard pluses and minuses from people. I think that there is quite a bit of anti-3A sentiment. We're aware of that. There are also people who are coming up to me anyway and saying, I appreciate you for, your decision to move forward on this and give it to the town for a decision. So as far as process goes, we've tried to be as open as possible. Obviously, this is complicated. It's not easily boiled down into a soundbite. It's difficult to figure out what the guidelines require, much less educate the public about that. But I am pretty proud of the job our board and staff have done in putting this forward, making sure that people understand it to the best they can, and that we are available to answer questions about it. For example, this meeting tonight. So that's probably a longer reaction than you wanted, but I do feel quite happy about the amount of public outreach we are doing. So I think, is there anyone from either of our boards who has not spoken yet, who would like to say something about this or respond to any of the questions that have been posed? I can't see everybody's
Beth has her hand up.
Okay, Beth has spoken already. I'm trying to find somebody who hasn't had a chance to speak who would like to. If not, I will call on Beth again.
Sorry, I was just moving location Um,
Beth, you're frozen, I think, maybe breaking up. I wonder if you want to turn your camera off. Maybe your audio will be better. Can you hear us?
I think we may have lost, Beth may
Yeah.
have lost her connection, Ann.
Yeah.
it-
Oh, Beth? Yeah, I think we've lost her. We did have 16 minutes on the agenda for,
Inter-
Beth, we cannot hear you.
Sorry about that. Can you hear me
Oh.
now?
Yes.
Okay, sorry about that. Yeah. My internet just doesn't like me upstairs, but let's try this. Okay, so my understanding is it may not be actually part of the statute, but it is part of the guidelines. I've seen it repeatedly in the guidelines, the unlimited occupants and unlimited bedrooms. There's also a conflict between the statute and the guidelines. Nowhere in the statute does it allow you to have a district outside of a half a mile from the train station. So that to me is concerning because the guidelines aren't even complying with the statute. So, but I did want to just clarify that it is unlimited bedrooms and unlimited occupants.
I think the question isn't whether the statute is unlimited bedrooms and unlimited occupants. I think the question is what you can reasonably do within the guidelines that we are, or the zoning bylaw that we are developing here at 13 units an acre on 6 acres of land. And that's not unlimited bedrooms and unlimited anything. It's quite limited, actually. So I would respond to it in that way. I agree with you that the statute is quite broad and does not draw all the distinctions that the guidelines do. I'm sure that members of our board would agree with you that the guidelines are in effect regulations and probably should have been promulgated in a different way. Nevertheless, we have decided we're moving forward with something and trying to get thoughtful comment about what it is we're doing and share that information as widely as possible. So I appreciate everyone's attention to this. If all of the members of the two towns boards have had a chance to speak, I might move over into taking 2 minutes of comment from 8 representative folks on the who are listening in, if that's desired. Margaret, I'm not sure how to do that, if y'all can see the hands if they go up. I will ask this to be limited to 16 minutes. Again, it's not a public hearing. A public hearing is a legal requirement that we have to have on the zoning ordinance, the zoning bylaw when it's ready for that. We're not ready for that yet. This is just an opportunity to be as open as possible to hear people. So we'd like, but we don't have all night and it's not a public hearing. So we would ask if you're part of a group and you want to designate a spokesperson, please limit it to 2 minutes, and we will close it out after 16 minutes. Margaret, is
Yeah,
there some
so-
way you can manage this for us?
Yes, and there is a
Kate.
list of attendees, and when their hands are raised, we will see that on our screen, and then Kate will hit an allow to talk, and then I can hit the timer so that people know how much time they have. So Kate, I see we have 2 people with their hand raised. Do you see that?
I can see 2 hands up. I can't tell who they are though, so.
Yeah, they go to the top.
Not that
of
it
the
matters
list.
because we want to hear from whoever's hand is up, but it doesn't give me a name is my point.
Just this is Jeff. Just for clarity, so you're aware, there's 91 people in attendance. I'm not sure how he came up with a 16 minutes, 8 people, but there's 91 people online. I'm not sure.
I know that, but it's not a public hearing. We don't have to take any comment at all, Jeff. This is a work session of our boards. I'm trying to be open. I'm trying to let people say what they need to say. Anyone who wants to email us or write a note to town hall can do that. I'm just trying to give a little bit of opportunity for folks to have a conversation. I have 4 hands up. If 2 minutes at a time, that's 8 minutes. That'd be great. If 8 people want to speak at 2 minutes, that would be great, but it's not a public hearing. So and I know that people have their lives. We, on our board, have been spending a ton of time on this. And we have heard multiple times from people at our open meetings, our regular planning board meetings, about their concerns. So I don't feel like we're cutting off comment unnecessarily in this situation. We will be having another meeting about this. People can come to our meetings. They can sit in on Zoom. We do take comment. So thanks. I have 5 folks who would like to speak, and I'm going to turn it over to Margaret and Kate to manage that.
So I would ask whoever is speaking to just please identify themselves with name and address, and Kate will allow them to speak. So I think the first person we have on is Tanya Gilmartin.
Tanya, you are muted.
Oh, yeah. Tanya,
Madam
can you
Chairwoman,
hear us? You're muted. There she
Madam
is.
Chairwoman, a point of order. We're just listening to people's concerns and questions. We're logging them, writing them down, but we're not expected to make a response, correct?
I think that's correct. Yes, we're just
Thank you.
listening.
Thank you.
Okay.
Oh,
I think I'll go to the next person and then we can come back to Tanya. Next is Lawrence Oak.
are they able to unmute themselves? Larry,
Can you unmute yourself, or do we need to unmute you?
I think they're supposed to be able to unmute themselves. Let's see.
Does that work?
There he goes. Yeah. There you
Okay.
go, Laurie. Yep.
Okay, so I'll be quick. I just I think there's a lack of trust.
I'm sorry. Could you just identify yourself, please?
Oh,
Just
Larry
we
Oak.
know.
You said Larry, so I thought you knew me.
Yeah, well, I do.
All right.
Sorry.
I think I was gonna say now. Larry Oak, 19 Longfellow Road in Wenham, Mass. Okay. Hello?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah,
Oh,
go
We're
ahead.
just
Go ahead,
listening.
Larry.
Wait,
You can hear
All
you.
Go
right,
ahead.
so there's like a lack of trust in the federal and state government levels right now, running rampant. Not locally, it's the big ones. So nobody trusts the state coming in saying, zone, just give us 2 places to zone. And because I read the thing 4 months ago when I was talking to Winthrop people, and if you do have it approved, it's hard to get it unapproved. Like, so I think it's better to vote no. And I appreciate all the work you guys did, because it's good. But I think a lot of people are afraid to say, yeah, here's 2 zones, because they can take that and then they can do whatever they want, is what is in the guidelines. They can, change it, there will be unlimited bedrooms. That's what they want. So that's the problem I have. So that's why I would say I wouldn't want to vote yes. I would want to vote no, and then join the amicus brief with Milton and see how that plays out, like Hamilton did. So that's it. That's all I wanted to say.
Okay, next we'll go
Thank
back
you
to
much.
next we'll go back to Tanya Gilmartin. Tanya, it says that you're muted.
I'm not sure if all the attendees understand that they can unmute themselves on their own computer. Tanya, can you see there you go.
Yes. Can you go into another person, and then I'm gonna wait until my husband comes in?
Sure. Next is Peter Gwynn.
Hi, Peter Gwynn, 7 Fairview Ave, Wenham, resident for 66 years, 3rd generation. I understand that this is a zoning exercise because the chairwoman and the planning board have emphasized the fact that it is a zoning exercise over and over and over. For that reason, I will be voting against MBTA at the special town meeting. This is the end of citizen control of portions, if not many portions, of the future of Wenham, and most definitely the same for Hamilton. Two other points. I am grossly disappointed in our planning boards and our select persons in the way that you have not been able to communicate this to the mass citizens in Wenham. You may think you've done a great job and you've probably worked very hard, but there are so many people that do not understand the future impact of what's going to happen to both these towns in the future. And the last point is, this is not about politics in any way. This is about common sense for both Wenham and Hamilton. Let's vote this thing no at special town meeting. Let's see where we end up and come back and address so many of the issues that are facing these two tiny towns. Again, thank you for letting me speak. And I'll say again, I am grossly disappointed in my town. Thank you.
Next up, we have Sal Celeste.
Can you hear me?
Yes, now we can hear you.
I unmuted myself.
We can hear you.
Oh, okay. There we go. Someone's got to say you can hear me. Okay. First, I'd like to say that both towns must act in unison. We're joined at the hip, guys. And if one town acquiesces to this, both towns are going to suffer. Now, when you boil it all down, zoning is what this is all about. Do not change the zoning. You change the zoning, that's our only safety net. Once the zoning is changed, I don't care if you call it an exercise or whatever you want to refer to it as, that's a canard. We all know it. You change the zoning, the game is over.
Yeah.
The site plan that you guys are putting together. Now, I know you guys did a whole lot of work on it, and that's all commendable. I get it, okay? But submitting a site plan and a district zoning plan from this town to the state, that's like helping them pick out the gun that they're going to shoot us with. We should not be submitting that plan. That should not happen at all. The town, I already happen to know. Now you say, well, this is just the zoning exercise. It's not the development exercise. I happen to know for a fact that they've already entertained some discussions with Pulte Homes, one of the largest developers in this country. And I defy people on this board to tell me to the contrary that did not happen. I already know they've already contacted the town. So we can't have that. Now, the last thing that I want to say is you allowed this to happen. It's going to irrevocably change the character of this town, and it's almost going to double the population in this town. Our infrastructure can't handle it, and we did not move here because we wanted more of the same that we moved away from. This is where we want to be. We like living in Pleasantville. It's nice here, and this is going to change the character of the town. This compliance argument is a lot of baloney, because you know what? They have no punitive recourse other than refusing us state funds, because we don't avail ourselves of any of it now. And let me tell you something. The next
Sorry, Mr. Celeste, I'm sorry.
down from this, that will change.
Okay,
So,
we've
I'm telling
hit
you-
our 2-minute point, Mr. Celeste. Just a point of clarification, Pulte Homes has approached the town about a tract of land at Gordon College. It has nothing to do with the MBTA zoning, and we do not have a proposal from them. So I just want to make sure that everyone listening understands that. Okay, Kate, next person.
Next is Peter Fisher.
Right here.
Hello, we can hear you.
This is Sandy Fisher, Greenbrook Road in Hamilton. Just thank you so much for allowing us to speak. I really appreciate it. A lot of things that I was going to say have been brought up by different people tonight. I just want to just encourage you to think about the home rule. Voters have the right to decide whether to adopt 3A. without fear of repercussions and being sued by our own state government. And people have mentioned it's a zoning change, but the state will take control of that area. The guidelines have been changed repeatedly up to now. Once we vote for it, the guidelines can be changed. You could be in compliance one day and not in compliance the next. It's a nightmare. It's like signing a blank check, because I believe we will bear the cost of the infrastructure. My background is in hydrology, and every time I ask about water supply, I'm told that we're working on regionalizing, which means we just want other communities to share their water with us. 3A's foisted upon the eastern half of Massachusetts. No communities are going to have water to spare because every town or city's water supplies are going to be continually stressed as more and more water is needed by the rapidly increasing populations, and they will rapidly increase. It is not simply a zoning exercise. We have the issue that has been brought up about the schools, the education of the children, which is extremely costly. I think Hamilton's budget is now 35 million. If we just had even one child in these units, it would increase our budget by 15 million alone just for educating the children. Has nothing to do with other programs, nothing to do with anything, septic systems, water supply, infrastructure, nothing to do with town programs, traffic lights, increase of the roads, costs of water, sewer. You know, you can go on and on. Electricity, police and fire protection, all of those things.
Yeah,
All those
I'm
costs
sorry,
will
the
one
2
at a
minutes are
time.
up in on this.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Fisher. It looks like there's another hand up.
Yes, we have Tanya Gilmartin. Tanya-
Yes,
Okay.
yes, this is Paul Gilmartin, and I will say again, the state continues to conduct and do certain things within our environment, but we right now have another piece of state land that is right behind our home that again they decided to build a tower on a little sliver right across from wetlands and right across from Appleton Farm. So we need to be very careful about what we want to do as far as how we develop this town and what we want to do within our town. We are in Hamilton, South Hamilton. Ipswich does not care, and the state does not care. They lease this land that is right in between Hamilton and Ipswich, and they lease it to a cell phone tower company that is now going to build a 120-foot tower right on the border of our town. So we have to decide and think about what we really want to do within our environment and within our town to preserve what we're doing here and what Hamilton is. So I agree with everything that everybody else has said, in that we have to really think hard about what we really want to do here and what this town is going to become, because the residents are really going to think long and hard about whether they want to stay here and continue to pay the taxes that we pay to facilitate everything that exists in this town.
Mr. Gilmartin, can you please state your address?
11 Prides Park.
Thank you.
Is that Hamilton? Thank you.
Next we have Mark. Mark, can you please state your name and address?
Yeah, Mark Ashton, 13 Central Street, Georgetown, and running for state rep for this district, and hopefully I'll be representing South Hamilton. I'd just like to highlight the fact that these guidelines can change, like you guys have brought up, and the statutes and guidelines significantly differ. Currently, Wenham, along with South Hamilton, Wenham's not even using any of the grants, and most of these towns being affected are not using these grants at risk, and there's a large cost that may be bared by the current citizens. And I've talked to hundreds of your citizens, especially the older citizens, are very concerned about the affordability of the town already. And I know that the intention of this is to help the affordability factor of housing for future residents, but you need to consider what's best for your current residents, and especially those who are already having affordability concerns with your town.
I think it looks like we have several other people with their hands up.
Next up is Rick. Rick, can you please say your name and address?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, I'm Rick Nardone, 9 Fairview Ave. I live right next door to Peter, who spoke earlier. Um, just a quick question, and I know that we touched on whether or not you guys are prepared to answer questions, but our candidate for state rep who just spoke, Mark, mentioned, and we talked about it a little bit earlier, the foregoing of potential grants from the Commonwealth. What's the order of magnitude of that number if non-compliance with 3A takes those off the table? Are we talking $50 million or are we talking $50,000 type order of magnitude?
Well, at least one of them is infrastructure grants, so that has to do with, roads and sidewalks and the infrastructure we've all been talking about. So it's hard to predict what the town will need in the future, but I don't think we want to assume they won't need anything.
But are they?
We won't want to access those grants.
But are they?
For more detail, I think I would have to ask the town administrator. So maybe we can take that under advisement and provide the answer at our next meeting.
Thank you.
I think Hamilton can probably answer. In the past, I think it's been 3 years, we've taken $28,000. Was it 3 years, Beth? I'm not sure if Beth's still on or somebody else can verify that, but I believe the number was $28,000 in grants in 3 to 5 years we've taken.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I think as far back as they have. And I think earlier, Anne had also said that Wenham has received no grant money.
And again, I also said that doesn't mean we won't want it in the future, and we can't
Understood.
say right now what that number will be. So, are there others who wish to speak? That looks like there's one more hand up.
Rick was the person who was speaking before.
I would like to speak as a citizen, not as a planning board member. I just want to remind people that elected officials, they're supposed to serve at the pleasure of the people, not the governor, not the AG, not the select board, not the town manager, and everything that we do must benefit the people who live here now. And I just want to reinforce that because these guidelines are changing constantly. And the original 4 grants were for housing grants. Now, they can't keep piling on punitive measures willy-nilly. They have to have some kind of process for that. And I just don't see that happening. But yeah, as a citizen, I just think it's a very, very bad policy or initiative or whatever you want to call it, guidelines. And I just don't think it's good for the people who live here now. And those are the people we work for, although I'm speaking as a citizen.
I'd like to recognize Rick Woodland.
He's muted.
Rick, will you take yourself off mute?
About that, Madam Chairwoman, thank you for recognizing me. I'd like to make a motion here at 8:14 that we now close the meeting of the Wenham Planning Board. And then I don't know when our next meeting is to recite that out, but thank you.
September 12th.
Peter Clay seconds that motion.
I think we're going to need to have a motion to adjourn as well from Hamilton, but before that, I'll take a roll call of the Wenham board members and thank everyone for their attention to this and for their interest. We may not always disagree on everything, but I think what we can agree on is that it's very important for citizens to pay attention to this and to do the best they can to try to understand it, to ask questions, to come into town hall, to learn what they can, and then they can vote, which is what we're all about. This is a democracy. This is about the town, and every member of the town should have a say. I am going to now call the roll. Weeks says aye to adjourn. Clay?
Aye.
Pasquarello, aye.
Clay says aye.
Anderson?
Aye.
and Woodland.
Aye.
And then I'll turn it over to Marnie to,
I'd like to
Um,
make a motion to adjourn for the Hamilton Planning Board.
Do I have a second?
Second,
Please indicate your assent. Pat Norton,
Pat Norton, aye.
Jonathan Poor,
Jonathan Poor, aye.
Emil Dahlquist,
Emil Dahlquist, aye.
Darcy Dale,
Darcy Dale, aye.
and Marnie Crouch, aye. We stand adjourned. Pardon
thank
me?
you very much, and thank you to
Oh, thank you, Ann.
and
Nice
to Ham Wen Cam.
And Pat Norton.
Good
Thank
night.
you.
Good evening. Bye.
Good night.
Thanks, everybody.
Recording stopped.